What's good, YouTube? It's been a while since I did a deck profile. I think the last one I did was actually back in February, where I posted like my own take on like 3-axis Dragon Link right when Fiber came out. It was like a pretty rough and like in hindsight kind of gross build that I don't really think that was that good, but I ended up not really playing from that point on just because of all the COVID stuff going on. And really the biggest reason I'm back now is that like things have eased up like a little bit in terms of like being able to play. Like my one of my local like card shops that I go to has like restricted reopening, I guess. Like basically, there's a cap, like only a certain number of people can enter, everybody has to wear a mask, there's like screens between like the players, no like touching other people's cards, all the basic stuff. And it's pretty much fine for the most part. I wouldn't go if I didn't think it was safe, obviously. But anyway, so I'm kind of just like, I haven't really been playing for like much of the 3-month gap in between, but I kind of like kept tabs on the format. I actually bought Abomination, and I have it built just in case I feel like I need to play it. But honestly, I just like Dragon Link more. I just think it's a more fun deck in terms of like building and like piecing like the combos together and everything. And especially when like Toon Chaos came out and like all like a lot of the crazy support in there, and even just like the Rose cards, and like they, every time I think I'm gonna stray away from this deck, they just give it more and more support, and it's absolutely insane. So yeah, this is what I've been playing for the past few weeks. It's a 60 card build. So if you know me at all, then you know that I'm very much a proponent of like playing as few cards as possible. Like most of my decks have 40 cards with an Upstart Goblin. I always kind of just feel like I want to play as few cards as possible because it maximizes the chances that I draw the strongest cards, and that overall offsets the risk of like drawing cards that are not really that great to draw. Like, and more often than not, you're just gonna draw like absolute blowout hands. And I stick to that philosophy for just about every deck I play, with few exceptions. This deck is an exception, and the reason for that is that I'm gonna actually compare it to another deck that in the past I thought was an exception, and that was the 60 card like Dark Warrior variants. Like there was the FDK, there was the Rongo Bongo Loop, just all that stuff. And it's kind of like the similar thing, is that both of them, the way they start pretty much all of their plays is with 2 monsters. So like in this deck you just need like 2 dragons, and then in the warrior deck you needed 2 warriors. And there's so many cards in the deck that you don't necessarily want to draw, and you want to search them out, and the deck has so much toolbox ability that like 60 cards doesn't really compromise the consistency. And in fact, it probably makes it even more consistent, because you minimize the chance of drawing cards you don't want to draw, but the combo is so like flexible that so many different opening hands can get it started. So like very rarely do you actually brick. And this deck in particular can even do something that Dark Warrior I felt couldn't, is that it can play hand traps, and I play a lot of them. Which, again, like as a combo player, I don't generally like hand traps, but this format kind of dictates that you have to play them. Like even Adam Emancipator plays like 6 hand traps. They play like the Nibiru and the Infinite and Permanence. Just like the existence of all the crazy like Needle Fiber Link Cross combos kind of just forces you to like have to play hand traps. And this deck has the advantage of being able to just completely combo off with like 1 or 2 cards in his hand, and then just like if you go second, you just back yourself up with hand traps, or if you get stopped, you can back yourself up with hand traps. And that was probably one of the bigger things that made me gravitate towards this. I did actually try a 40 card build on Tuesday that was inspired by Sean Ping Zhu's list that he used to like go into VFD. Same idea. But what I didn't like about that one is that it really lowered my opponent's ceiling, but it also lowered my own. So if my opponent was able to stall and survive, then I didn't really have many options to kill them aside from hopefully just beat them down enough. What I like more about this build, for one, this is not the FTK. I could play the FTK, but I just don't think it would be that fun. This is still like Buster Lock Unchained Abomination. And what I like more about that one is that even if it's like potentially easier to break than just like a straight VFD, it has a much higher ceiling. Like every single play I do just generates advantage. So like I end up with this massive board, and then I end up having like 2 to 3 cards in my hand afterwards, and that kind of just sells it for me. It's so hard. It's much harder to stop this, and that's kind of why I gravitated towards this specific build. But yeah, let's get into it. Yeah, so 60 cards. So for the Rockets, I play 3 Tracer. That's obvious. I feel like you can theoretically only play 1 because it's not really a starter card anymore, but it's just like it's the best one, and you want to play like a certain number of rockets for the sake of quick launch, and sometimes you use this and then you still want to summon another one later. So like it still just makes sense to play 3. And then like the other rockets I play are 1 silver, 1 magna, and 1 shell. So I guess the biggest thing is that right now I'm not playing recharger. You could probably replace the magna with recharger if you want to just have recharger's effect as like a situational option. But honestly, like, Silver Rocket having 1900 attack has always been, like, so far has been more relevant to me than Rocket Recharger potentially reviving something from the graveyard. That's, like, maybe come up once, whereas Silver Rocket having 1900 attack or Rocket Tracer not being big enough to run over something has come up, like, 3 or 4 times now. So because of that, like, Magna Rocket is like the second strongest rocket in terms of attack, so I just decided to play this instead. But you can like definitely just play Rocket Recharger instead if that was what you would prefer. At the end of the day, it's mostly just a name. And then Silver Rocket you actually do need because Unchained Abomination means it rips a card out of your opponent's extra deck. The reason for Shell Rocket is that in the situations where, like, if you summon Link Ross and then your opponent does something to get rid of the tokens, so they say they like Veiler it, or they impermanence it, or they like token collector, whatever they do to stop you from getting, you know, the 2 Link Cross tokens. If you manage to if you have a card in your hand that will let you get to Shell Rocket and Rocket Tracer together, so if you like already have the Tracer and then you can like dump Router to grab this, or if you open Quick Launch, you can do that. Basically, it lets you push through the combo even if the Link Ross gets negated, which is why this card has been very useful, and I'm definitely really glad I'm playing it. Surprisingly, Shunping's most recent build didn't play it, but I got the idea from him, so I don't know. It's been really useful to me. So those are all the rockets. Oh, and then the 1 Router also, so actually that's all the rockets. And then for other like Dragon starter engines, there's 3 Cypherts and Black Dragon, Collapse Serpent, and Wyverburster. Obviously, if you open... So, like, this is actually the worst of, like, what I consider the 9 starters. Because, if you open with just this, and say, theoretically, every other card in your hand is a blank, then you actually can't end on the full board. Instead, you'll end on either the Buster Lock or the Abomination, but not both. But there's so many extenders in this deck that you're more than likely going to have another way to put another body on the board, and then you get the full combo. So this is still like a really good starter. And then for the Red Eyes package, I play a very, very big Red Eyes package, and I'll explain why after I show it. So I play 3 Black Metal Dragon, play the 1 Red Eyes Darkness Metal. Even though it's been errated now, it's still extremely powerful. And then I play 1 Red Eyes Retro Dragon, 1 Malefic Red Eyes Black Dragon, and 1 regular Red Eyes Black Dragon. So obviously you play that because it lets you play him, and this is like the one true Garnet in the deck where you just absolutely do not want to draw it. But basically, like, playing the Malefic Red Eyes means that the Black Metal Dragon is still a starter because, like, it's just another body you can search because this card is, like, searching isn't once per turn. And then, like, between, like, Red MD and, like, Pisty, you can constantly loop Black Metal Dragon, and then you end up searching the Red Eyes Retro Dragon also. This card's effect is, like, absolutely useless. What matters about it is that it's a level 4 Red Eyes that you can search, and that's important just because sometimes you have, like, you won't burn your normal summon, and then you'll just want to summon it, and then you'll use it to Synchro or Link, or you'll, like, ditch it for, like, Cypher, and just grab, and then you can use the Cypher as a body, but then also grab the Mini Chaos Dragon. Or, like, more often than not, it ends up being discard fodder for Quad Boral. But definitely both of these have proven really helpful. And I can probably do, like, combo videos later about, like, all the combos, but they kind of just, like, end in the same line. It's just, do you start with the Mini Chaos Dragons or do you start with Black Metal? And it kind of just ends up the same way. But yeah, these are really good. And then I know an older build by Shunping was playing Red Eyes Wyvern instead. With the same intention of it's a level 4 Red Eyes that you can search. Red Eyes Wyvern's effect is like very slightly better because it could theoretically come up later in the game. but like realistically, you're not going to reach that point. And Red Eyes Wyvern's a wind, whereas this is a dark. So if you draw this in Chaos Space, you can still use it. So that's why I ended up playing Red Eyes Retro Dragon. Funny thing is, I actually just found that card today. I didn't know it existed until like earlier this afternoon. All right, so other extenders, I play 2 Noctovision Dragon. I think this card's really good. The reason I'm not playing 3 is because the third one was the 61st card in the deck. So in the situations where Noctovision is useful, I think it is one of the strongest extenders in the deck. The problem is that I think it is useful in the least amount of situations. Whereas the only time where Noctovision is really useful is if you open it, because you're basically going to use it when you summon Striker Dragon. And it's really good in that situation because, you know, you chain block the Striker Dragon, you chain block the Romulus if you want to, and you draw a card. Like, it replaces itself. It does so many great things, but it's really only good in that situation, whereas every other extender I had, where I had to cut a card for, like, one other card, and every other extender that I could have potentially cut, while not necessarily as powerful as Noctovision in the situations where it's good, they were useful in more situations, and they were overall more versatile, and I wanted to go for that instead of just having the power of Noctovision Dragon. So that's why I ended up cutting it to 2. If I could find room for a third one, I would play it. I do think the card's really good, but it was like the least versatile of the extenders. And then other cards, 1 Levianeer, it's very easy to get to if you need it, and then you can just add it back with Cypher. Red Rose Dragon and White Rose Dragon, these are part of the combo with Needle Fiber. Dragon Buster, this is how you lock your opponent out of the game. And then Dark Worm, because I play Shrine and Foolish, because I also think they're pretty versatile extenders. And that's all like the regular monsters. And then for hand traps, there are a lot of them. I think there are 15, because there are 3 Ash, 3 Veiler, 3 Nibiru, 3 Gamma plus the Driver, and then 3 Impermanents. So basically 15 hand traps in the brick. Yeah, so that's one of the advantages of the 60 card build, is that it can play 15 hand traps, and basically that maximizes your odds of seeing it while also minimizing the odds that you see too many of them. Like, you're very likely to see 1, you're pretty likely to see 2, you're not likely to see 3, which is good. In the 40 card build I was trying before, I didn't play Ash or Impermanence, I just played Veiler, Nibiru, and Gamma. I just think they're the best ones for this deck because they're light, which means they synergize with Chaos Space if you don't need them. Gamma in particular is really hilarious with Chaos Space, because if you open the Chaos Space and the Wyvern Burster, you can use the Chaos Space to search for Gamma, because it can't be normal summoned or set. And the other thing that's really cool about Gamma is that if you play Chaos Space or Cypher it and your opponent is stupid and ashes that instead of saving it for like Fiber or something, you can actually chain Gamma to negate it. So that's a way that, like, you can use Gamma to punish bad players. But overall, it's really just like, these are just like the most powerful hand traps in terms of like generic use across the format, I feel. So yeah. And that's all the monsters and the 3 traps in the deck also. So, and I think they take up like at least 40 spots in the deck. I think it's like closer to 45. So all the spells, 3 Chaos Space. I can't believe they made this card. This card is so good. Like, I shouldn't have to explain it. It's just absolutely wild. Just grabbing Wyvern Burster or Collapse Serpent, you can grab Levianeer, and then it's like, it just cantrips itself by like letting you draw a card, and then lets you recycle the baby Chaos Dragons. It's wild. I can't believe they made this card. It's really, really good. 3 Quick Launch, also just a really good extender. And it's a really good way to get to Tracer if your opponent like stops you in some other way. 3 World Legacy Guard Dragon and Monster Reborn. Just like the generic revival is just useful for extending or pushing through disruption. Guard Dragon is probably the better of the 2, just because it lets you more easily play around disruption, because it can move the arrows of Link monsters. But Monster Reborn is also just like more generically powerful as a revival card. But they're both really good. And then Dragon Shrine and Foolish Burial. I opted for these over Unexpected Die, again because they're more versatile. In that, if you need the body, you can dump Dark Worm, but if you don't need the body, you can like dump Levianeer and then add it back to your hand with Cypher. If your opponent like stops you from getting to Dragon Ravine, you can play Shrine or Foolish to dump Absolouter to get a rocket to your hand. Like, there's just so many different things these cards can do, which is why I ultimately decided to play these. And that's also why, like, when I was thinking of cards to cut to add the last card, which was actually Driver. Because I had Phantasme in here before, and then I decided that I wanted to play Gamma more, because it's like an actual disruptor, whereas Phantasme just possibly draws me into it. But what made me decide to cut the Noctivision instead of the Shrine is just that Shrine is just a more versatile card. So even if like Noctivision is like theoretically stronger, I feel like Shrine is useful in more situations. And Shrine has definitely come up a lot more than Noctivision has, so I'm definitely glad I maxed these out. They're a lot better than I originally gave them credit for. And they kind of like solve, like, one of the things I didn't like about playing only one Levianeer is that like it was kind of hard to get to if you didn't open it, or if you didn't like have an extra way to dump it. And later on in the game, these cards essentially act as 4 more copies of Levianeer as long as you have Cypher in the graveyard, which you usually will. So yeah, so I'm definitely glad I played them. And then 1 for 1 is just another really powerful starter because it gets you to black metal. And then the last 3 cards in the deck are the 3 field spells: Black Garden, Boot Scepter Launch, and Dragon Ravine. Don't really want to draw any of them. The best one to draw is Black Garden because you can use it or discard it and then just add it back, because Garden Rose Maiden adds from graveyard, which is hilarious. But ideally, you don't really want to draw any of them. You just want to search them all. And yeah, that's the main deck, 60 cards. So for the extra deck, the main combo uses 13 of the cards in the extra deck, and then the other 2 are just there to kind of just play around Disruption. So 2 Striker Dragon. I really wish that I could get away with playing 1 of this, because theoretically I only ever want to use 1. The problem is that this lets you play around Disruption a lot easier, because sometimes when you do guard, like if you get negated and you can't quite get the Appaloosa, you'll have to do the standard, like, 2 arrows pointing down, and then you'll have like LP Striker and then like a zone. And that's a lot easier to work with than having like LP Pisty and then trying to like awkwardly get rid of like one of the dragons. So like it's really just better this way to just play 2 Striker Dragon. Also, the Black Metal Dragon combo I came up with actually burns both Striker Dragons. So sometimes you actually do use both in the combo, but usually you only use 1, and the second ones are just as a backup. But it comes up enough that like I just feel like you have to play 2, even though I wish you could play 1. LP and Pisty. These cards are still powerful, and I feel like LP will still probably eventually be banned. Link Cross, I don't know why they made this card. It's really dumb. Fiber, this card's also really dumb, but I've seen this coming for years. But yeah, this is like the holy trinity of everything's fucking stupid right now because of these 2 cards. So yeah, it's not even a trinity, it's just 2 cards. Romulus to grab Ravine, and then turn into Link Cross. Delindris and Quad Boral, both still key cards, and like ending on Unchained Abomination with the Borreload Savage Dragon. Protector Whelp, this is the other extra card that you don't use in the combo, and it's just there in case you need it. It's just a generic Link 2 that points down left and down right, and it's a dragon, so like, it's just the most useful of them. Like, I think you can actually use its effect to dump Dragon Buster in like fringe situations where you need a dragon in your graveyard, but it like never comes up, but it can. Union Carrier to attach the Dragon Buster. Appaloosa, Unchained Abomination. I considered using Boral Sword instead, because you can like Boral Sword target the Silver Rocket, it pops itself, it summons Magna Rocket, and then Boral Sword can target the Magna Rocket. But Unchained Abomination like does the same thing, it's just way more versatile. It's just like, it's less raw killing power, but you output so much damage that you don't even need the raw killing power. Like, I was siding Access Code Talker for a bit, and then I just ended up taking it out because I never found myself needing to side it in. So yeah. And then the 2 synchros are Garden Rose Maiden and Borreload Savage Dragon. This card's basically a slightly lesser Ib, and Ib is like one of my favorite cards in the game, so this basically replaces her because Ib is banned. So like, I can't believe they made this card either. It's so insanely good. And that's the extra deck. Side deck is pretty generic. It's just like mostly just siding for like back row hate. It's Pancratops, 3 Dark Ruler No More. I might replace this with Ghost Ogre when all the Numeron stuff comes out, because Numeron seems really stupid. Just Utopic Zexal is a cancerous card that shouldn't exist. But Dark Ruler No More, this is kind of just like the flex meta call for whatever the format looks like at the moment, and Dark Ruler No More is like pretty useful right now, but I could see it falling out of favor when Numeron happens. Lightning Storm, this card's been pretty fucking good. Twin Twister, I've been back and forth on this or Cosmic Cyclone. I don't really like discarding in this deck, but I think in the 60 card variant, you want whatever side cards you draw to just be blowouts against back row decks. So Twin Twist is better in that regard because it's just a blowout against back row decks. So it's kind of just worth the discard at that point. And then there's also evenly matched. There's also a blowout. Red Reboot's a blowout. And then the last slot, like I said, this used to be Access Code Talker, and I realized I didn't need it, so I just ended up putting a Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend, just if I need to burn them in time for game. And it's an option. And like I really didn't know what else to put as the 15th card. I considered Token Collector, but I really don't like that card in this deck because I have to get rid of it in order to do my own plays. And the only way this deck can reliably get rid of it is by going into Fiber or Protector Whelp, and I just don't want to do that. So, yeah. And then, like, I could play one Lancia, but it feels weird to play one Lancia, so I figured it'd just be better to just play the one Scarlet. But yeah, so that's the entire deck. Just going to keep playing it for locals because that's really all we have right now. I don't really like playing the game online, so I'm probably not going to compete in any like LCSs or anything. And my invite that was supposed to go for Nats this year got carried over into next year, so I don't need to really worry about regionals either. So I'm just playing to have fun for the most part. And yeah, and that's all for this video, and I'll see you guys next time.